They thought you were disposable, didn't they? Like a backup plan, just another chapter in their story. But here's the twist. The moment they realize you were the story, that's when everything cracks. Imagine the silence after you've walked away, how it echoes louder than all their gaslighting ever could. It's funny, isn't it, how someone can be so full of themselves and still feel so empty without you. This moment, their moment of realization, isn't just about revenge or vindication. No, it's the turning point in a much bigger story, yours, one where you rise not in rage, but in purpose, where fear stops being your jailer and becomes your fuel, where their collapse becomes your awakening. So don't blink, don't scroll, because what's coming next will flip the script, and you'll never look at your pain the same way again. When you walk away from a narcissist, something profound happens, not just on the surface, but in the unseen dynamics of power, identity, and control. The moment you choose to detach, truly detach, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally, you initiate a shift so powerful it can shake the narcissist to their core. Because narcissists thrive on control. Their entire identity, their illusion of superiority, is built on the ability to dominate the emotional landscape of others, especially those who love them. They don't want you just to stay. They want you to orbit around them, constantly reflecting back their inflated sense of self. So when you break that orbit, when you choose your peace over their chaos, your self-worth over their validation, it's not just a rejection. To them, it's a collapse of a carefully constructed illusion. At first, they may not even flinch. They'll smirk. They'll mock. They'll pretend you walking away means nothing, that you were never that important, that they saw it coming. But that's the mask talking. Deep down, your absence starts to burn. It starts to unravel the story they told themselves about who holds the power in the relationship. And that's what narcissism is often about. A story, a fantasy, one where they are the puppet master and everyone else dances to their strings. But when you stop dancing, when the puppet cuts the strings, the master becomes irrelevant. That's the terrifying part for them. It's not about losing you as a person. It's about losing what you represented. Control, admiration, dependency. Your silence becomes louder than any argument. Your calmness more unsettling than your anger. See, narcissists feed off emotional reaction. The more you cry, beg, or try to prove yourself, the more they feel in control. But when you become still, when you no longer react, when you no longer need to explain or defend, something within them panics. It's like looking into a mirror and seeing no reflection. You were never meant to leave the stage. You were supposed to keep performing, even if it meant suffering. But now the script has flipped, and for perhaps the first time, they're not the center of attention. You are. It's not easy to walk away. Let's be clear about that. The trauma bonds, the mind games, the intermittent rewards, they all make it feel like you're leaving behind a part of yourself. That's by design. Narcissists make themselves indispensable in ways that seem small but add up over time. They make you doubt your intuition. They make you question your strength. But the day you start trusting your gut again, when you finally realize that peace feels foreign only because chaos became familiar, that's when the power begins to shift. It's subtle at first. You sleep a little better. You breathe a little deeper. You smile without faking it. And those are the signs that you're healing, that you're regaining what was always yours, your power. Meanwhile, they start to spiral, maybe not visibly. They might post pictures pretending to be happier than ever. They might jump into another relationship with lightning speed. But deep down, they feel the void. Not because they love deeply, they don't, but because they lost their favorite tool. You were the mirror that kept their ego intact. You were the fuel for their false self. And now, without you, they have to confront a reality they've spent a lifetime avoiding, that their power was never real. It was borrowed, stolen, projected. You leaving doesn't just threaten their emotional comfort, it exposes their emotional bankruptcy. That's why they often come back. Not because they've changed, not because they finally see your worth, but because they miss the power they had over you. They miss the validation, the reactions, the control. But by then, if you've truly walked away, not just from them, but from the version of yourself that needed their approval, you see their return for what it is, a trap, a repeat, a chance to be hooked again. But this time you're different. You're not looking for closure. You're not looking to be seen. You see yourself now. That's the ultimate shift. It's not just about leaving the narcissist. It's about returning to yourself. The you that existed before the manipulation, before the confusion, before the guilt trips and gaslighting. That version of you was never weak. It was just buried. And every step you take away from them is a step back to that strength. Narcissists are masters of illusion, and the fuel that sustains their illusion is your attention. It doesn't matter if that attention is positive or negative, praise or criticism, love or rage, it all serves the same purpose for them: validation of their existence, reinforcement of their control, and confirmation that they still occupy space in your mind. To a narcissist, being ignored is not just inconvenient, it's unbearable. They thrive on knowing they can influence your emotional state, dictate your thoughts, and pull your focus away from yourself and onto them. Your attention is their currency, and the moment you stop paying, their empire begins to crumble. This is why every interaction with a narcissist feels like a game you didn't agree to play. The rules keep changing, the goalposts constantly shift, and just when you think you understand what's happening, they flip the narrative again. That's not confusion, it's manipulation. Narcissists create emotional chaos on purpose because chaos ensures your focus stays on them. If you're constantly trying to figure out what went wrong, how to fix things, or what they're thinking, you're not focusing on yourself. You're not healing. You're not moving forward. You're stuck in their orbit, and that's exactly where they want you. Even silence becomes a weapon in their hands. They'll withdraw affection, give you the silent treatment, or disappear just long enough to make you panic. And when you finally break the silence, when you reach out in desperation or confusion, they win. Not because they wanted to talk, but because they got your attention again. It's a cycle designed to wear you down and make you feel like you need them to feel whole. But the truth is, their control is an illusion that only works if you keep looking in their direction. When you stop looking, when you stop reacting, when you stop feeding their ego with your energy, that illusion collapses. Narcissists often mistake attention for affection, control for connection. They don't build real relationships. They build dependency. If they can get you to rely on their approval to feel good about yourself, they've won. But here's the irony. They need your attention more than you need their approval, because without it, they're left alone with a self they can't stand. A self that's insecure, hollow, and afraid. So they create drama, they stir conflict, they provoke emotion, not to connect, but to control. And the most dangerous part is they'll do it so subtly that you won't even realize it's happening. A look, a phrase, a carefully timed insult disguised as a joke. Every move is calculated to keep your focus on them. The real shift begins when you reclaim your attention, when you start redirecting it inward. When you choose to notice your needs, your dreams, your peace instead of their mood swings and manipulative tactics, that's when the balance begins to change. You start to see them not as powerful, but as predictable. Not as dominant, but as desperate, because their power was never rooted in strength. It was rooted in distraction. You were so busy trying to decode their behavior, you forgot to listen to your own voice. But when you start paying attention to that voice again, when you stop just surviving and start living, something extraordinary happens. You start to realize how much energy you gave to someone who only saw you as a reflection, never as a person. This is why narcissists often panic when you go no contact or set firm boundaries, not because they respect you, but because they can't control what they can't access. Your attention was the leash, and now that it's gone, they have no hold. They may try harder, sudden apologies, love bombing, dramatic promises of change, but even that is a tactic, a performance designed not to heal, but to hook. Because if they can get you to look at them again, if they can get you to explain, argue, cry, or plead, they know they still matter in your world. The antidote isn't anger, it's indifference. Not the cold kind that pretends to not care, but the quiet, powerful kind that genuinely doesn't need them anymore. When your energy is no longer available to feed their ego, when your attention is fully focused on your own growth, they lose access to the very thing that sustained their illusion of power. You stop existing in their world and they no longer exist in yours, not because they disappeared, but because your attention did. And in that moment, the dynamic shatters. The game ends, not with revenge, not with confrontation, but with clarity. You realize their control was never about strength. It was about where you placed your gaze, and now you've finally looked away. The moment you remove yourself from a narcissist's world, something inside them begins to shift in ways they never anticipated. They never expected you to leave, not truly. They assumed you'd always come back, that their presence in your life was permanent, unshakable, inevitable. Because that's how they operate, with entitlement, not gratitude. So when you finally walk away, not out of spite, but from clarity, you create a void they never prepared for, a silence they didn't think they'd have to endure. And that silence, it doesn't just echo in the room you left. It screams inside their mind. Your absence becomes louder than any words you ever said. At first, they'll pretend it doesn't matter, they'll laugh it off, they'll post pictures, flaunt new relationships, act unbothered, but these are just tactics to mask the internal chaos. Because deep down, they feel it. Something is missing. And not just anyone, you. Not because of who you are to them, but because of what you represented. The steady supply of attention, validation, control, and emotional energy. You were their mirror. You were the source they siphoned from to maintain their inflated image. And now that the mirror is gone, they can't see themselves the way they want to. They're left staring into a distortion, unsure of who they are without your constant reflection. It's a strange thing how someone who dismissed you, diminished you, maybe even devalued you, suddenly becomes haunted by your absence. But this is the paradox of the narcissist's psyche. They don't value you until you're no longer within reach. When you were available, they saw you as replaceable. Now that you're gone, you've become irreplaceable. And that shift drives them into a quiet frenzy. They replay conversations, they stalk your social media, they try to decode your silence, not out of love, but out of need, because your detachment forces them to confront a truth they don't want to face, that their control was never real, it was borrowed from your willingness to stay. You see, narcissists build their identity through the eyes of others. Without an audience, the performance loses its meaning. And you weren't just part of the audience, you were center stage. Your reactions, your emotions, your presence, all of it fed their fragile ego. Now that you've gone, they're left with a stage and no spotlight. That's what turns your absence into their obsession. Not affection, not remorse, but the sudden collapse of the role they played in your life. They were the star in a drama you stopped attending, and the show can't go on without you. They might try to pull you back, not because they've changed, but because the silence is too loud. They'll test your boundaries, reach out with innocent messages, pretend to care about your well-being, but each gesture is loaded with hidden motives. They want back in, not to love you, but to reclaim the power they lost. And when you don't respond, when you maintain your distance, their obsession deepens. Because now it's no longer about connection, it's about conquest. The one who got away becomes the one they need to reclaim, not out of heartache, but out of ego. This is when the smear campaigns might begin, the passive-aggressive posts, the sudden attempts to turn mutual friends against you. If they can't pull you back, they'll try to control the narrative, because if they can't have your attention, they'll try to steal everyone else's. But even that is rooted in obsession. They're still talking about you, still watching you, still reacting to a version of you they can no longer reach. That's the power of your absence. It forces them to face the emotional emptiness they once disguised with manipulation and control. And while they obsess, you heal. While they chase a ghost, you rediscover your soul. While they spiral into confusion, you rise into clarity. That's the beauty of walking away from someone who never valued your presence. You become valuable by no longer being available. Not because you played a game, but because you stopped playing theirs. And in doing so, you showed them something they didn't expect, that you were never the weak one. You were the light they tried to dim, the strength they tried to drain, the truth they tried to rewrite. Now, your absence is a constant reminder of what they lost. Not just a person, but a source, a mirror, a witness. And no matter how many people they find, how many distractions they create, they won't find another you. Not because you're perfect, but because you were genuine. And in a world built on illusions, genuine is unforgettable. That's why they can't let go. That's why they can't move on. You left, but the impact stayed. You became the silence they can't escape, the memory they can't erase, the obsession they can't control. There's a quiet kind of revenge that doesn't come with shouting, blocking, or trying to make them jealous. It comes when you stop bleeding for someone who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. Healing yourself after enduring a narcissist's manipulation is the most powerful move you can make, not because it punishes them directly, but because it dismantles the very foundation they stood on. They built their control on your self-doubt, your dependence, your need to fix what was never yours to fix. So when you stop needing them, stop explaining yourself, stop begging for respect that should have been freely given, you're not just healing, you're breaking the system that allowed them to feed off your wounds. Narcissists don't know how to process real loss. To them, people are extensions, tools, placeholders. They don't think in terms of connection, they think in terms of access. So when they lose you, what they mourn is not your love, it's their grip. Your healing is the loudest silence they can't ignore. You're no longer reactive, no longer emotionally available, no longer seeking their approval. That terrifies them more than rage ever could, because anger still means you care. Indifference means you've evolved. They can't handle that. They don't know how to fight peace. They don't know how to reach someone who no longer plays the game. Healing doesn't start with them apologizing. It starts when you stop waiting for it. When you finally understand that closure isn't something they'll give, it's something you build. It's born in the moments you sit with your pain, not to relive it, but to learn from it. It's in the days you choose to get up, even when the weight of your memories tries to pin you down. It's in every small decision you make to treat yourself with the love they withheld. And as you begin to shift, to grow, to breathe without permission, you become the very thing they never expected. Free. The narcissist wants you trapped in the narrative they created. They want you replaying conversations, questioning your worth, doubting your choices. But when you start healing, you stop playing the role they wrote for you. You stop showing up to scenes designed to keep you small, and instead, you become the author of a new story, one that doesn't center on them at all. That's the revenge. They expected to be the main character in your life forever, but your healing removes them from the script. They may still try to pull you back. They'll use guilt, nostalgia, fake accountability, even changed behavior to convince you that maybe, just maybe, it can be different this time. But the healed version of you sees through it. You recognize that their words are just costumes worn by the same manipulative patterns. You no longer crave what they pretended to be, because now you've tasted something more powerful: truth, peace, self-respect, and nothing they offer can compete with that. Revenge, in its traditional sense, is loud and obvious, but true healing is quiet and undeniable. It's the soft glow in your eyes when you stop surviving and start living. It's the confidence in your voice when you speak your needs without apology. It's the comfort in your own skin, the calm in your own company, the strength in your solitude. All the things they tried to convince you you'd never have without them, you now cultivate on your own. That's what destroys the narrative they tried to implant, that you needed them, that you were nothing without them, that they completed you. Your healing shouts the truth louder than any confrontation ever could. You were whole all along, and maybe they'll hear about your progress. Maybe they'll see the glow, the joy, the new life you've built. But even if they don't, it doesn't matter. Because healing isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about realizing you were never too emotional, too needy, too intense. You were simply too real for someone who couldn't handle depth. And now you've reclaimed everything they tried to steal: your voice, your light, your boundaries. There's no need for revenge when your life becomes the evidence that you've risen. When your peace is untouchable, when your energy is sacred, when your joy no longer depends on someone else's chaos, you become untouchable. That's what haunts them the most. Not your anger, not your sadness, but your joy, your growth, your radiant, unstoppable healing. Because while they remain trapped in the same cycles, chasing validation, playing the same games, you've evolved, you've moved on, you've elevated beyond their reach, and they'll never understand how you did it, how someone they tried to break became someone they can no longer access, no longer predict, no longer control.